Coming for to carry me home is a different metaphor than the one that I thought of. But you know, when people walk into one of our centers, that's one of the most common things that they say is, I felt like I was home. I just felt like I was home, and I was safe, and I was comfortable, and I was good. I'd like to say that that's how my ministerial career started, but it wasn't exactly that way. I was terrified of being in a church. My finding and fitting into science of mind studies started because I had a acoustic music society, and one of my board members, it was a nonprofit, one of my board members was the music director at the Reading Church. And she would say to me just about every week, "You would love my church. You would just fit right in. You would love it." And I would say, "Nope, not interested." And then my soon-to-be husband started attending Science of Mind. It was called 101 at that time, Science of Mind 100 series. And he was falling in love with the church and also falling in love with another woman. So I kicked him straight out of the house, and I said, you know, you don't divide your attention. You love, and you love well. And Lisa Whipp once again said, "You would love my church." Creative Thought magazines in those days started showing up on my coffee table and the toilet. And I had told Dan he had to go, you know, not scatter his love energy. And so one of our musicians was traveling through from Bellingham, Washington, and he was offered $50 to perform the music in the Reading Church. His name was Jeff Morgan, and he said he was staying with me because I also put on house concerts at the time, and he was doing a house concert. And he says to me, "I need some support to go to church because I don't know what it's going to be like, this teaching, and I'm not used to it." And he says, "Will you go with me?" He says, "I really need the $50, Jane." So we decided to stay up talking about it, and he showed me the music he wanted to play. One was "Goodbye, John Wayne," and these are both his own writings. "Goodbye, John Wayne," about the uprising of gentler, kinder, more spiritual men. Okay? And the other one was 6 months into a Miracle, about his wife being pregnant with their first child. And I wanted to hear those songs, you know, so I said, okay, I put on what I considered church lady clothes, a real dress, and I walked in, and I was terrified. I broke out in a cold sweat. I sat in the very last seat, in the very last row, and they had little red hymnals in those days, and I tried to distract myself by opening the hymnal. And I looked at some of the music, and I said to Jeff, I got to get out of here. I can't do this. He says, "Just wait, let me do my first song." And he did his first song, and it was great. It was powerful. I had tears, and so did several people in the church. And then a train went by, because we were in the old Reading Mall right on the railroad tracks, and when a train would go by, everyone would sort of have to go, for quite a while. And, you know, sometimes the trains were really long. Really long. I was just about out of my seat as that train was finishing when Reverend James Golden stood up to speak, and my behind literally sank back down into the chair, and I came back every Sunday, and I'm entering my 26th year of being a minister. So it felt like home. It felt totally like home. It was funky in the old days. The church here in Reading started out under Reverend Zukov in the Anderson Festa Board. Any of you remember the Anderson Festa Board? A funky, very bad food buffet. And even though it started there, when James and Andrea Golden came to take over the community right after Dr. Zukov made his transition, they didn't have use of the Anderson Festa Board anymore. So they had to go to a new place, so they went to the Red Lion, the bar. Because nothing was happening in the bar on Sunday mornings, right? They could get it really cheap, so they met in the bar for a while. And then they got into the place on the railroad tracks. And then that brings me to, I walked in and I felt like I was home. So I started coming to church every Sunday, and I had 3 teenagers. They were 11, 12, and 13 at the time. And I would tell them I was going to have coffee with my best friend Martha. And after several weeks, I came home from church where my Dan and I had reunited. We're falling back in love with one another, and we're making breakfast buffet plans, wedding plans after church service every Sunday. And I got home, and here are my 3 children. Their body parts were touching. They were all on the same couch. My oldest daughter looked me in the eye, and she said, "Where have you been?" I said, "I've been going to church." She says, "Mom, it will be so much better for you if you just tell the truth." And so I began what has become my lifetime ministry as an ordained minister, and now even as a doctor, on a lie to my kids. And so here's what I want you to know about this history of this building you're sitting in. For one thing, it is a magnificent dream come true. Ernest Holmes says, if you can conceive it and believe it, you can build it. You can make it so. It will happen. That's how this building came to be. We had a contractor in the congregation at the time who had a work crew, very upscale contractor, and he agreed to do something nobody in their right mind would probably ever do, which was to let the volunteers work under the direction of his contractor team and build this building, build this space. You see these beams up here? Look up. They're still shiny after all these years. I hung out on scaffolding for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I hand polished. I hand sanded. I put the lacquer on, and then climb back down the scaffold. I had a lot of, well, some people call it chutzpah, some people call it fearlessness. I wanted to do everything about building this building, and I was the volunteer coordinator by then, and I was making all the projects, and I was learning how to ask people for their money. I was learning how to get them involved and invested in something greater than themselves, the active, sacred service of Seva. And I was getting good at it. I bought myself a tool belt. I put all these little hammers and things in there, you know. Bought myself a cap, overalls. I was doing it. And we raised like an old-fashioned barn building, we raised the two sides of this framing. We stood like 40 people or so in a row, and we just put our butts into it, and we we worked forward until we got it up in place, and then his crew, secured it. Came time that I wanted to learn everything, and so the roof was next, right? Oh, I don't really like heights. But I wanted to learn how to roof. And so you start, going up and you get to the top, the peak. That's when I realized I hadn't thought this through all the way. Because I was a pretty good-sized woman of substance at the time, still am, but less so. And I had had several fractures of my legs as a kid and a young teenager, and I'd had even one car crash. So my ankles didn't have as much flexibility as the usual ankle on a body. I'd have about that much flexibility instead of that. And so to go back down could not be possible for me on my own. So I was lowered by strong men, 4 or 5 strong men on ropes. They sort of anchored themselves at the top, and they let me slide a few inches at a time until I'm down to, where it peaks over there. And then more people ran up with a big tub to kind of catch me. I built this building you're sitting in. Oh, so here's the thing. I had been skeptical that spiritual practice would work for someone like me, because I was a bit of a wild woman at the time. And having the Music Society, my weekends were about music festivals, rock and roll, and stuff. And it's a real shift to give up those weekends to go to church. It's a real shift. It's a real commitment. And I went through practitioner training, just couldn't stop. Went through practitioner training, and I was in. I could pray with anyone. I worked for Head Start. I would pray with people in the mop closet. I would stop and pray on a dime with anybody. But was I going to be a minister? No way. Dr. Andrea would tell me that the ruts of my resistance were still going from Overhill Drive down here to the church. And I was probably the last person to know that I was going to go on into ministerial training. I'm still one of the first people to wake up in the morning and go, how did this happen to me? It happens because there's something in each of us as individual humans that yearns for the unity, for the connection, for the oneness with Spirit. We yearn for it. Sometimes we don't have a name for it, but we know there's something greater than us out there, and we want to be absolutely connected with it. And at some point, we stop doing the stuff for what can it do for me, and we get to what can I use this for to do for others, to help others lift and feel as good as I feel lifted. How can I serve? And that's when you get into Seva. This sign up here, I was looking at it this morning, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's absolutely how it feels for me. Absolutely. And my teachers, both of them, James and Andrea, appeared at a time in my life when I was vulnerable. I was like ripe for this teaching. I was ready to just take it all in. And what I loved most about it is sort of my My hula practice came back because it's embodiment when you do hula, and I could do it as interpretation to spiritual music, and it was like a prayer. When you hula, you first call in the breath. You recognize and unify with the source. In that case, it would be the gods and goddesses within Hawaiian legend. And then you offer the dance. And in my hula interpretation to spiritual music, I just simply invite God, cosmic power, divine intelligence, the mother beauty, to dance me, to use me. And when we do spiritual mind treatment, that's what we're saying. We're saying, use me, give me what I'm declaring and anticipating will arrive in my life. Give it to me from a place of such obviousness that even I will recognize it. Even I will recognize and see that this is what is next for me. This is what I've been asking for. So there's a little building out back here that's used for the light source now. When I was still working with Head Start, I negotiated a deal where they would put the building on the property to use it for the 3-year-old home visiting program, and then the church could use it for the youth program on Sundays. So that little building is there because I worked a deal. Let's talk about Seva for a minute. How many of you volunteer? Show of hands. I'd like to see about double that amount of hands go up in this room anytime soon, because when you give your gift of Seva, you learn so much. You learn humility. You learn deepened faith. You learn the blessing of being outside of your thought process on just yourself and into the gifts to the world. The practice of Seva, selfless service, is something that I definitely learned here in this congregation. And I was not so selfless when I walked in the door, you know? And I did not have so much patience when I walked in the door. And I had to learn the really hard way how to be part of a team. We used to have retreats up at La Diaz, yeah. It's been 23 years and I'm getting older. We used to have retreats up there, and one of the things we would do is set the tables, the salt and pepper, the napkins, the silverware, and James Golden would have everybody waiting to come into the dinner while we'd be chanting outside. And I was on volunteer duty with one other person, and I would set my tables. And she would come along and she'd reset them, change them to be the way she wanted them to be. I would go reset my tables. She would come reset them again. This went on and they were chanting and chanting and chanting. James finally came to us and he said, "Ladies, you're going to need to learn to work together." I looked at her, she looked at me. There was not very much love passing through our eyes. He says, "People are hungry. And they are hungry for more than food. They are hungry for cooperation, for friendship, for kindness, for compassion, for love. Now, one of you needs to put down the conflict. Which one of you is going to do that?" This was my first adventure in surrender. I surrendered to that, and I watched her change all the tables to the way she wanted them to be. And I just stood there and watched. And I let it be. And then I learned forgiveness. Forgiveness. That's why you want to be a volunteer. That's what I'm telling them. It's not. People walk into these homes, places that we build together, and we come and we join together in community. They walk in here, and they're coming from so many different levels. Some of them are already very, very skilled at being human beings, and some aren't. Some have had rough childhoods. Some have not had opportunities to learn these finer tactics of team building and cooperation and offering selfless service. Selfless service, Seva, that means nobody has to tell you thank you ever. That's a hard one. Of course we want acknowledgement. But when you're coming to it from Seva consciousness, that's not why you're doing it. It will come to you. People will acknowledge you. People will be very grateful for you. They will shine you up, and they will love you up, and they will thank you for everything you've done. And that's not why you do it. You're doing it because it's the most selfish thing you can possibly do for yourself. To get out of yourself, out of your own way, and learn how to be a more giving, loving, happy, self-satisfied human being. That's a little boastful. I better do some forgiveness work there. What the mind can conceive, we can achieve. Our foundational beliefs include the Seva consciousness and the unification of spirit, the joy that spirit has in each of us finding our true self and growing into it. And you'll be growing and evolving every day of your life, every single day, if you allow yourself to. If you feel stuck in any way, it's because you're not allowing yourself to grow and evolve. So think of a dream. What dream do you have that you think is too big for you to achieve? Think of a dream. Open your mind to something that's in your bucket list. Something you want to happen for you that will give you more joy, more beauty, more power, more peace, more poise, more lightheartedness, more love. More. It sounds really greedy. It's not. That's the divine purpose for all of us, to have more and better. More and better. Not to compare with others, but to have for ourselves, to enrich ourselves in the big and the small ways. It's not about money. It's about life. So they've got these piggy bank things going on here. And that reminded me of how we collected some of the money to build this place, because this was a huge idea. And we did a change jar in the bookstore area every week, and it had a little sign on it, small coins equal big change. And those coins that came in week after week helped build this building, this campus, buy the property, do all the touches. It's a really big deal that you get to bring in a piggy bank. Even that small thing lets you be more connected to the people who may be strangers to you, yet they're wanting to meet you right where you are. I think I got pretty good at asking for things for the church, for others, through prayer, through connection. I still had a hard time asking for myself, even in my prayer treatments for myself. It's all a process. So I actually stopped asking for myself, and I just started doing something very simplistic with my personal practice. I just said, I accept. I accept all the good that is mine to receive in this day and every day forward. I accept, and I'm grateful for it. I didn't ask for things anymore. You know, for a while there, I was going to car dealerships because I'd never had a new car, and I had 3 little kids, and I was pretty poor. And I would go and sit in these cars just so I could have the experience of what would it be like to have a new car. I stopped doing that in my second year of study here, and instead I said, I know what it feels like to sit in a new car. I accept. I know what it feels like to sit in a better house. I accept. I know what it feels like to be in the beautiful woods. I accept this and better for myself and for everyone. And that's really why every one of you come to church, and I hope none of you are as sneaky about it as I was. It's a good life. It's a good life. They've actually recognized me at a level that they made me the manager of licensing and credentials. That means I am the top cop of the entire organization. And I have globally, I'm in charge of everybody's licenses, everybody's community affiliation, and if ministers or practitioners run with scissors, they get to talk to me. And if they're getting really good stuff and not running with scissors, they get awards. Me, I get to honor all of the people who make their life transitions at our annual events, and I have a staff that is so tiny that we wonder how we can even do this. Greater awareness as I close this talk is there are somewhere between 400 and 450 communities like this around the globe. There are just about 2,000 is a standard average ministers in all types of ministries, and 4,000 to 5,000 practitioners at any given time. This that you're living started with Ernest Holmes, based on the transcendental movement of Emerson and Thoreau and all the great transcendentalists. And we believe that there is no separation between us and our good, which is our God. And I let that be so for me and for you, and so it is. Oh, that's funny. The Sunday lesson in the sheet on the podium says my title was Toots, Ruts and Wings. Toots. It was supposed to be roots. Okay. So what is going to happen next is I'm going to give you a treatment, and then I'm going to step down here, and the choir is going to come up here, and they have agreed to perform a special request for me, and so they will sing and I will dance. Take a deep breath. Take it deep, deep, deep into your very center of your body and hold it there with love. Feel your heart beat. And know that God is the source of all this breath and heart and intelligence. And God has done a good thing by creating each and every one of us in this room to be exactly and uniquely who we are, to show up who we are as we are with every good, powerful possibility and potentiality in front of us. I am so divinely aware that we are the beloved daughters and sons of divine intelligence. We are consciously choice in the mind of God. We each have a unique gift to give and share. And I know for each one of us that we share that with greater love, greater joy, greater passion, greater excitement, because good to great is an easy step. Life can be risky business when we hold ourselves back, and so I choose not to do that. I choose to play big, loud, and happy. I choose to play healthy and with compassion. And I choose to play and pay for my life with attention. My intention for joy, for laughter, for love, for connection, for prosperity, healthy relationships, is an expectation that I have that will be fulfilled in ever-evolving, more wonderful ways. I know this for myself. Right here and right now, I am knowing it for each one of you. And because I claim it, and I own it, I know it as more than possible. And so, I set this prayer free on one wing of effort and one wing of prayer. May it fly straight and true to the mind of God from whence it came. Amana, this prayer is complete, and so it is.